On the evening of June the 11th of 2021, Canadian woman Nicole Orr was outside her home in Nolan Hill, Calgary, with her 2 daughters. She bent over to push her youngest on a bicycle and suddenly felt a sharp pain after something had grabbed and was pulling on her leg. Orr turned around and realized that a coyote had bitten into her thigh. The attack, which was captured on CCTV, only lasted a few seconds, leaving Orr with ripped-up leggings and puncture marks. She spent the night in the hospital, receiving treatment that involved tetanus and rabies immunizations. Orr subsequently spoke to a media outlet and recounted that she'd never heard the coyote, which experts deemed unusually bold and aggressive, sneaking up on her. She tried to slap and kick it away before it fled. Orr added that the situation could have been worse had the animal targeted one of her children, but also noted that hers wasn't an isolated incident. In the past weeks, another woman had been bitten by a coyote and needed treatment, while dozens of Nolan Hill residents had reportedly approached the city with reports of coyote sightings. Officials decided that the coyote responsible for the attack on Orr would be tracked and put down. Teams of contractors were sent to the neighborhood with the purpose of hazing the animals through loud noises and other unpleasant experiences meant to reintroduce their natural fear of humans. Number 7. Donna Sanguinario. An elderly woman from Lancaster, Massachusetts, became the victim of a vicious raccoon attack that left her fearing for her life. In early December of 2021, Donna Sanguinario, age 70, was putting up Christmas decorations outside her home on the 1st of the month. She heard noises from the street and, upon checking the source of the commotion, came within feet of a large raccoon. Sanguinario didn't have time to react as it charged her and started tearing into her arms. While she was actively being mauled, Sanguinario was able to put the raccoon in a headlock. The senior citizen later reported that she could hear bones breaking in its neck before she released her grip and the animal fled. The ordeal had lasted several minutes and Sanguinario remembered thinking she was going to die. She uploaded photos of her cuts, bruises, and bite marks to Facebook, describing the experience as the worst nightmare of her life. She estimated that the raccoon weighed about 45 pounds, and the authorities launched a search but were unable to find and test it for diseases in the immediate aftermath. Sanguinario was treated for her injuries and put on a course of rabies vaccine shots. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, raccoons joined skunks, bats, and foxes as the main wildlife carriers of the rabies virus in the US. In case of bites from an infected animal, the victim must get vaccinated as soon as possible to prevent the virus from reaching the central nervous system. As reported by the WHO, rabies is virtually 100% fatal once that happens. Number 6. Sherry Russo. In the summer of 2022, a short clip began circulating on social media of a woman in Ithaca, New York, as she was attacked by a fox in her own yard. In the surveillance footage captured on the afternoon of July the 25th, Sherry Russo was talking on the phone while standing on her front walk. The wild animal came at her from behind and bit into her leg. Russo initially thought it was her neighbor's dog and was ready to shoo it away, but then looked down and saw a gray fox. The 61-year-old woman kicked it multiple times in the head and body, with some of the strikes sending it spinning through the air. Nevertheless, the highly aggressive fox persisted in the attack. At one point, it sunk its teeth into Russo's hand and remained latched on for several seconds as the woman desperately tried to shake it off. Alerted by Russo's screams, a neighbor carrying a long stick rushed in to help her, which finally prompted the fox's retreat. The neighbor took Russo to the hospital where the 16 puncture wounds she'd sustained in the attack were cleaned and dressed. Fortunately, none of them had resulted in bone or tendon damage. The mother of one was then given the first of 4 planned rabies vaccines, a tetanus shot, immune globulin injections, and was also prescribed a series of antibiotics. While she was being treated, the fox was killed and taken to a Cornell University laboratory where it tested positive for rabies. Russo's husband posted the clip of the attack to his Facebook in August, calling it an educational video meant to underline that such attacks can happen to anyone. Number 5. Jody Naylord. On a Sunday morning in June of 2018, British woman Jody Naylord abruptly woke up with a throbbing pain in her left bicep, which she quickly found to be covered in blood. The 22-year-old then saw a fox at the edge of her bed. Naylord kicked it off and started screaming. The animal retreated and remained behind a curtain until Naylord's boyfriend drove it away by throwing pillows at it. He then took Naylord to the A&E at King's College Hospital, where she spent 2 days as staff tended to her bite wounds and gave her several preventative injections. The fox had snuck into the couple's ground floor apartment in Clapham, southwest London, through a 5-inch gap in the patio doors. Naylord, who was grateful not to have been bitten in the face, told a media outlet that she didn't know if it had been a direct attack or a reaction to her startling the fox while moving in her sleep. In the incident's wake, she reported being afraid to be in the room alone at night for fear that the fox might return. Number 4. Laurel Rose von Hoffman-Kersey. On October the 30th of 2021, Laurel Rose von Hoffman-Kersey, a 66-year-old retired doctor from California, heard thumping sounds coming from downstairs at her family's Lake Tahoe cabin. She initially thought that her son was responsible for the commotion, but as she made her way down in the dark, saw a black bear rummaging through her freezer. It was only illuminated by the light from the appliance, and before von Hoffman-Kersey could retreat, the bear charged her. It delivered a paw strike that nearly rendered the woman unconscious. Before it started ripping into her body with its claws and teeth, von Hoffman-Kersey fought back and scared the animal by throwing a quilt and a robe on its head. The woman's husband and son were woken up by her screams and got out of their rooms, at which point the bear fled. Von Hoffman-Kersey suffered a bite near her left breast, as well as multiple other wounds to her neck, back, and arms. She described the injuries to her face as being the most painful, but was also concerned that a puncture wound to her abdomen had ruptured her spleen. It would have had severe implications as the woman was receiving chemotherapy for lymphoma at the time. Her family provided first aid and called 911, whereupon von Hoffman-Kersey was rushed to the hospital. She later recounted that staff had done a spectacular job of tending to her injuries before putting her on a course of antibiotics. The family believed that the bear had been attracted to the smell of avocados that they'd brought with them to the cabin, as they hadn't produced trash nor eaten or done any cooking. They hadn't deadbolted the door at night, which allowed the bear to push its way inside. Wildlife officials planned to catch the bear by setting up traps around the cabin and collected DNA material from von Hoffman-Kersey's wounds to ensure they have the right animal. Number 3. Timothy Satterley. In August of 2021, Hurricane Ida swept through Louisiana, becoming the second most intense and damaging hurricane to have made landfall in the state. The day after the storm on August the 30th, Timothy Satterley went outside his home in Slidell and was attacked by a massive alligator that had swum into his flooded shed. Satterley's wife, who was not named, heard a splash and went outside to find her 71-year-old husband as he was being mauled by the beast, which reportedly had him in a death row. By then, it had already ripped one of his arms off, and his wife was unable to intervene. The woman didn't have cell phone reception and left in a canoe to try and call 911. When she returned to her home, the alligator and her husband were gone. About 3 weeks later, deputies found and killed a 12-foot alligator near their property. Its stomach was found to contain human remains, which DNA testing confirmed as Satterley's, using samples from the man's sons. Number 2. Walter Hickox. Florida man Walter Hickox fought off a black bear in January of 2022 after the deadly predator had made its way onto his back porch. What followed was captured on security footage, then shared numerous times online. Two of Hickok's 3 dachshunds intercepted the bear as it climbed over a small fence and walked onto the porch. Fearing for the safety of his pets, Hickox immediately lowered his body and tackled the bear head on. He ended up on his knees, but managed to wrestle it out the door. Hickox, who'd kept screaming throughout the fight, dragged a nearby bench to act as a barricade in the open doorway. He then shouted to his wife, "Oh my God, I've been attacked by a bear!" Hickox's charge on the beast was successful as none of his dogs were hurt, but it did leave him with tooth and claw marks on his arm and back. He subsequently posted pictures of the bleeding injuries to his social media, prompting many users to laud his brave and selfless intervention. In an interview he later gave for a local media outlet, Hickox stated that not much was going through his mind at the time of the incident other than stopping the bear from getting to his dogs and wife. Longing for more? Then be sure to stay tuned after number 1 to watch our earlier release about the 13 craziest animal home break-ins. Number 1. Christy and Happy Wade. A clip from the home surveillance of a couple in North Carolina went viral in the spring of 2021 as it showed them struggling to fend off a bobcat. Shortly before the feline pounced on April the 9th, Happy Wade was carrying a plate of brownies to his car while his wife Christy was holding a carrier with their cat. The couple were about to take their pet to the vet. The bobcat let out a growl as it charged 52-year-old Christy and bit into her hand before climbing on her back and over her shoulder. Happy ran around their SUV, pulled the bobcat off his wife, and then forcefully threw it across the yard. The footage ended as the man chased after it with his legally owned pistol in hand. While some commenters were critical of Happy's reaction to shoot the bobcat, the 56-year-old defended the move by saying he knew something was wrong with it. Aside from its unusually aggressive behavior, the bobcat was also underweight, with both aspects indicating that it was suffering from disease. The Pender County Sheriff's Department confirmed that a bobcat was killed in Burgall on the same day that the attack had occurred, and testing revealed that it had rabies. Happy and Christy had both been bitten repeatedly in the attack. The couple received a total of 35 shots over the course of 14 days following their exposure to the disease, with Christy reporting that the injections were almost as bad as the attack itself. Number 13. Montana Bear. Wildlife officers responding to a call in Missoula County, Montana, discovered a situation that eerily resembled the Goldilocks fairy tale. Homeowners in Butler Creek had made a call after finding a black bear sleeping in their closet. The animal had entered the home and somehow managed to lock the deadbolt. Once inside, it then climbed on a closet shelf and took a nap. Black bears are strong beasts and exceptional climbers. Even though they're fully capable of killing adult humans, attacks are rare and usually motivated by hunger. When wildlife officers arrived at the scene, they tried to get the bear to leave by banging on a window. Their efforts were met with disinterest by the animal that reportedly simply stretched and yawned. It was ultimately tranquilized and removed from the home for relocation. Number 12. Queensland Python. A homeowner from Queensland, Australia, was forced to confront what some people would probably describe as their greatest fear. The elderly man, whose name wasn't released, lifted the toilet seat and found a python coiled inside the bowl. He immediately contacted a snake removal firm and was told that the serpent had most likely made its way through an unsealed drain pipe. By the time a snake catcher arrived to his home, the python had already disappeared inside the pipe. The homeowner told a media outlet he'd avoid using the toilet until the matter was resolved. Number 11. California Bear. Bears have a big appetite and an outstanding sense of smell, which sometimes guides them into encounters with humans. In this case, a bear broke into a California home and started raiding a family's fridge. It ate 2 pints of Ben & Jerry's ice cream, as well as leftover taco meat. 2 teenage boys were inside the house at the time. After calling 911, they quietly sat in the bedroom, as instructed by the officers. Their resolve was tested when, presumably looking for a way out, the bear tried to break inside the room. They managed to hold the door as the animal clawed at it and thus avoided a confrontation. They'd subsequently described the incident as the scariest moment of their life, but both emerged unscathed. A wildlife officer arrived at the scene and opened the front door so that the animal could get out. The bear paused in the driveway but returned to the forest after the officer fired a warning shot. Number 10. Florida alligator. Crocodilians are among the scariest creatures in the animal kingdom, and alligators are no exception. They're outstanding predators with a bite that can easily tear through flesh and break bones. One Florida resident got the fright of her life after discovering an 11-foot alligator in her kitchen. At around 3 a.m., the massive reptile broke into her Clearwater home through a low window. Startled by the noise, the woman went to check it out. That's when she saw the massive beast in her kitchen, flashing its teeth. It had damaged the walls, smashed wine bottles, and broken the kitchen table. The police and wildlife authorities were successful in removing the unwanted overnight visitor, and no injuries were reported. Number 9. Brisbane python and spider. Australian wildlife has earned a fearsome reputation from the many dangerous creatures it encompasses. In fact, it's a rather common internet trope that everything in Australia is trying to kill you. One Brisbane man can attest to the stereotype after he found two of the country's most dreaded creatures inside his home and in close proximity. The Reddit user uploaded a picture of a huntsman spider stuck to a wall, only a few inches above a massive carpet python. Some users commented that the homeowner should let them fight, while others encouraged him to evacuate. It's worth mentioning that despite their rather alarming appearance, both creatures are relatively harmless. Number 8. Assam tiger. As human territories expand into animal ranges, encounters have been reported more frequently in various parts of India. These can sometimes turn violent, as the country is home to leopards, tigers, and several aggressive bear species. While this next break-in ended peacefully, the consequences could have been dire. That's because it involved a Bengal tiger, one of nature's most skilled and ruthless predators. The animal sought refuge from monsoon floods in a garage outside Kaziranga National Park in the state of Assam. Exhausted, the adult tigress fell asleep on a bed and was initially undisturbed by the homeowners. Through a crack in the wall, they filmed the animal as it rested with its head on its paw. After wildlife officers arrived at the scene, the road was blocked and firecrackers were set off in order to wake the tigress up. The animal promptly left the property and retreated to the forest. Number 7. New Zealand seal. While some animal home break-ins are potentially deadly, others are just very unusual. By her own admission, New Zealander Annette Swaffer thought she was hallucinated upon seeing the animal visitor on her couch. That's because staring back at her with a pair of big brown eyes was a baby seal. To get to the woman's home, the animal had wandered a long way from its natural habitat. It had gone from the waterfront across busy roads and a residential neighborhood. The baby seal then entered the house through a cat door and climbed a flight of stairs before finally napping on Swaffer's couch. The woman contacted the Department of Conservation, where staff had actually been looking for the animal. It had likely just been weaned from its mother and had been left alone as it looked for food. A spokesperson for the department noted that seals can carry diseases and may injure humans, so the proper course of action is to contact wildlife authorities. Number 6. Queensland cassowary. Cassowaries are by all accounts the most dangerous birds in the world. To attack potential threats, they rely on their powerful kicks. One of their toes is modified into a dagger-like claw that can easily disembowel a human being. A cassowary named Peanut would often pass through the backyard of property owned by Peter and Sue Leach in Cairns, Australia. The couple was familiar with the bird and didn't mind the wild animal feasting on the berries from their garden from time to time. Yet in April of 2016, Peanut went farther than ever. As Sue was preparing dinner, she walked in to find the cassowary in the middle of her dining room. Aware of how dangerous the bird could become, the woman ran out of the house and went in the garage. Her husband hid behind a table and took a few pictures of Peanut. After several minutes, the cassowary walked out the front door and no one was harmed in the surprising encounter. Number 5. Zimbabwe hyenas. Within the incredibly diverse African wilderness, there's fierce competition among dangerous predators such as lions, crocodiles, leopards, cheetahs, and hyenas. Since the continent is home to more species of megafauna than any other place on Earth, its territory and hunting grounds are constantly under dispute. Sometimes, predatory packs will pursue their victims into areas inhabited by humans. That's what happened in June of 2018 at a luxury safari lodge in Zimbabwe. A pack of at least 14 hyenas chased a kudu bull and killed it in the lodge's reception area. CCTV cameras captured the attack and the predators retreated, most likely upon hearing the armed staff approaching. The check-in area in the hunt's aftermath was a sight fit for a horror movie. The antelope's savage corpse was left in a pool of blood with its twisted horns still intact, and bloody hyena paw prints covered the floor. Number 4. Mumbai leopard. Residents of a Mumbai suburb were understandably terrified when news emerged that a leopard had broken into a residential building. The feline wandered into the lobby of a Maluland housing complex and snatched a pet dog. The attack was captured by security cameras. The canine was sleeping at the time and oblivious to the fact that a vicious predator was creeping towards it. The leopard's swift and unforgiving attack was over in a matter of seconds. The pet fruitlessly struggled against the predator's powerful grip. It was dragged into the Mumbai streets where it was presumably eaten. The ultimate fate of the attacking leopard remains unknown. Number 3. MENGHAI elephants. A report of an elephant raid in the Chinese county of MENGHAI emerged in the early spring of 2020. The information was limited, but it seemed to be centered on a herd of over a dozen animals that raided a town. The Asian elephants broke into 2 homes as well as a grain alcohol store. They damaged the vats and, according to some villagers, got drunk and started behaving erratically. Luckily, none of the residents were hurt by the ransacking animals. Number 2. Camels in Australia. In 2009, a small town in the Australian outback was gripped by terror as thousands of camels invaded. As temperatures in central parts of the country sweltered, the animals were desperately searching for water. Some placed the total number of camels as high as 6,000. Residents of the remote DONNA River, home to about 350 people, became too afraid to leave their homes. And children faced the risk of being trampled to death. Some of the camels actually broke inside the residences or caused structural damage on the outside. They destroyed roads and clustered on the local airstrip. The latter was a significant issue as medical evacuations became impossible. The government determined that since the animals were so numerous, a massive culling was the only way to deal with them. As such, helicopters loaded with marksmen were sent to the region. Number 1. Botswana hippo. By some estimates, every year hippos are responsible for thousands of human deaths in Africa. There's basically nothing that an unarmed human can do against a hippo, since the enormous beast's jaws are strong enough to crush crocodilians. So naturally, finding one on your property is a nightmarish scenario. Yet, Brent Reed had to deal with such a situation when he found a 3-ton hippo in the swimming pool of his Botswana home. It happened on December the 31st of 2019, and Reed's youngest son joked that they were having a hippo New Year. Reed believed that the massive male had entered his 6-foot-deep pool, seeking to cool off as the region had been experiencing an unusually hot and dry season. Thankfully, it showed no signs of aggression. Reed called the wildlife authorities as he didn't think the hippo could get out, yet at 2 a.m. on January the 1st, he saw the animal grazing outside his bedroom. It was a harmless visit, but the cleanup operation for the pool did involve removing about 220 pounds of dung. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be unable to subscribe to any streaming platforms or get attacked by a bear in your home? Let us know in the comments section below.